journey. I think it's really important to identify a really signature moment that just happened. Our board unanimously voted in support of the definitive purchase agreement, and the management at Alliant has also approved this. And this is really sort of a historic, hopefully historic moment. You know, like us, Alliant's leadership has become increasingly compelled by the idea of bringing this power plant back to life. And there's been I think 2 years worth of negotiation to get us up to this point. And you know, the negotiations with Alliant have been marked by just really strong, positive, collaborative approaches between their leadership and ours. And you know, the purchase agreement that we're going to sign basically says we're going to take ownership of this property so long as we can raise the money to do so within the next 3 years. And this has not been a small feat, and I see Dan Schoof over here, and he deserves a public praise for the good work that he did with Alliant's leadership to bring us to this point. So this was a really huge phase, or really huge step in this project, and so we're really proud to share that publicly. And you know, back to what I said before, I've had the pleasure of leading this campus group, which has been collaborating with the folks at Studio Gang, and I just want to say a big public thanks to that group, because they've been putting in a lot of time on this project, and I just want to, you know, acknowledge them publicly for the critical contributions that they've been making. So there have been 4 students on the group right now: Alex Hink, Sean Little, Ari Kokalas, and Joe Peacock. 3 additional staff: Peggy Carl, Jen Walsh, and Tim Schmeeken, and then 4 faculty: Yafa Grossman, Mark Clausen, Kristen Bonney, and Matt Tedesco. And in addition to their good work so far, they have a pretty deep understanding of what we're trying to achieve with the project. And I invite you to be in communication with them outside, you know, this room or this meeting, and give them your thoughts and feedback as they can feed that back into our planning. So what's going to happen is that Jeannie's going to come up now and give us some of her sense of the work to date. And she's going to introduce along the way some folks that she's brought along from her team. We'll have time for some questions, and then after we stop the live stream, we'll have a chance for you to get up close with the model. And I'll just point out that we've left some paper on the table. We'd love to hear your feedback. This kind of a session doesn't always lend itself to hearing your reactions or your questions or the things that surprise you or concern you. So feel free to capture whatever kind of reaction you have on those pieces of paper and sort of leave them there, or just give them to me when the event is over. So without any further ado, I think I'll invite Jeannie up, and let's give her a warm Beloit welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us today to share our work on the Beloit Powerhouse, and hello to the people watching on live stream. Today I wanted to review a little bit the research that went into the project, how we got to where we are today, and let you know where we're going next. We are at this point in concept where we have developed an approach to the project, but it's still pretty preliminary in that we're still going to be researching several options of architecture, but all of the options for the architecture will be reinforcing these same ideas that we've come up with so far, just looking at different ways to formalize them. I want to review a little bit of the background and history of the site with you today. I think when we first started out, we looked at the site from a zoomed out view, looking at the most important thing, I think, about the site being adjacent to the river, to the Rock River, and what does that actually mean, and how can we take advantage of that river. So we looked at the watershed and how the river touches all these different counties. And also looked at the campus itself and the perimeters of the campus. And as you can see in this diagram, really understanding that the Powerhouse, even though it's so close to campus, it really feels separated, mainly by the presence of Pleasant Street, and also because of the topography change between where we are here up on the hill and touching down to the river. During the process, we've had some student interns working with us in our office from Beloit. Let's see, I think Nicole and Amy and Katja and Chelsea, who are also working together with Steve Applebaum, who's our ecologist. So we've had some interesting input from the students of Beloit that help us shape our thinking of the site. This diagram shows some of that work, a map of these historic Winnebago villages that were actually Native American settlements along the river. And it's interesting to think about how important the river has been historically to the people who have inhabited the space even before the power plant was built. And we hope to, through this project, reunite Beloit College with the presence along the river. This is another map one of the students created that helps talk about the uses of the different buildings on campus in relation to the site. And then this one was really influential for us. I don't know if people know what a Sankey diagram is, but the idea that the width of the arrow shows the significance of the flow in movement, and this reflects daily pedestrian movement along campus from both the academic side of campus, but also the residential and recreational side of campus. Actually, what we discovered through this diagram was really that there's a need to make a strong connection to the Powerhouse from the residential side of campus, because it turns out that, that during the time of day when students would be using the Powerhouse, that would be really times of day that are more related to eating and sleeping, and the times that there aren't classes. That became clear in this campus activity map that one of the students also prepared. So these were research diagrams looking at what uses were currently taking place in the different buildings. And it takes us to this pedestrian path, like how to actually get over Pleasant Street and get to the building. What we see in this existing diagram here is that there's a lot of flow moving toward the existing sports center. And when we add the Powerhouse to that, how does that change? And what are the opportunities that are made available to us? And so this next slide looks at our desire to make a connection from the academic side of campus, from the residential side of campus, and zoomed out to this flow here that you see in the top of the slide to the actual ecology of the campus as well. So it's kind of like these three places that we can make a strong connection to the river. Because of the topography, one easy way to connect without having students fighting traffic as they cross the street would be through a bridge over Pleasant Street. So this purple line represents how these paths might pick up people from the different residence halls and bring them directly across and enter into the Powerhouse without engaging, the speeding cars going by. The green bars represent a way to kind of in the future connect a campus green space down the hill and across the street at grade. And so that's like a desire that we want to do to make that connection as well, and that will help people connect to the riverfront path. And then again, the water path will be collecting water, cleaning it before letting it enter the river. A little bit about the history. We looked back at some old photographs to find out what the process was of building the Powerhouse was. The first thing was actually a dam, but we have some interesting photographs here from 1935 of they called these different parts of the Powerhouse Unit 1 and 2. This image shows Unit 4 that was under construction in 1948. And I want to call your attention to looking at all this robust steel structure here that you can see in the photograph, because we're going to talk about that more later. And mainly that steel was there to hold the heavy hoppers full of coal. You can see in this image the elevator, the coal elevator, coming up and dumping coal into this hopper. In 1949, you can see units 3 and 4, and you can see the smokestack there in the center. And then a couple of other changes that happened over time were that the storage wall that was basically holding the coal is still standing in this view, and there's also a railway bridge, which later in 2005 became the pedestrian bridge that we have there today, the footbridge here. So this is the most recent photo that we have looking at the building from above. This is just a shot showing you like maybe what you haven't seen before on the other side of the concrete wall, this coal yard, looking at the building from the north. And many people have seen this. Here's the structure inside that we saw in the black and white photograph from the inside as it stands today with the big coal hoppers. And there's a lot of other steel in the building. Much of it is in perfectly good condition to reuse as well. One of the things we did this winter was walk through the building with some students and faculty to look at these interior machines and objects to see if any of those would be interesting to keep within the project. I think our goal from the beginning has been not to try to maintain this beautiful, heroic scale and character of the building, and the challenge has been how to make this scale of space become a human scale and something that people feel comfortable being in. And I think my favorite part about the project, as we get to showing you the renderings of where we are today, is the idea that it will be possible to combine the uses of both a kind of a sports center and recreational center with the uses of a student union and gathering and social space. So I think, and I haven't really seen that done before, and so that's really exciting for us as well. And so to start with, in order to understand the structure that exists, we employed a rather, relatively new tool, this laser scanner, and this is a picture of one here. So instead of laboriously like going out and measuring every inch of this, which would be impossible really because of the scale of it, we're able to map the building in 3D and actually get a drawing that gives us the exact location of all the steel. So this is a drawing that came out of that scan. And you can see how much steel is inside this building just waiting to be used in a brand new way. And so instead of clearing it all out, so one of the pieces of the program, just to back up, is a big open space, which is a space that needs to have a clear span without columns like this inside of it. And that would be used for many different activities, and it really wants a high ceiling in a big open space. So when we discovered how much steel was already in the building and that it was really capable of doing much more than it already was doing, we thought it would be a perfect piece of the building to employ to hold the big open space. So our key discovery, I think, in this first phase was just that we could use that steel to hold something big and open above it. What I like about that concept, and although we are still exploring other concepts like what if this big open space is on the ground, I think what's interesting about it is really that it came from really understanding this growth of the building over time and how it's in the building's DNA to have additions. It has always been about additions. If you look up, this is 1844, all it was a dam built on the river. And then in 1913, Unit 1. In 1929, Unit 2, doubling the power that was possible. 1945, Unit 3, at this point, you can also see that you have the conveyor, you have 2 smokestacks basically on the building at that point. In 1947, Unit 4 came on, and it was narrowed down to the one iconic smokestack there. But each time, just making it bigger and more efficient, it's almost like just an essay in brute functionality, you know, for this building. In 75, it reflects, you know, where we were as a country, starting to be aware of air pollution, and the Clean Air Act was enacted, and these scrubbers were added onto the outside of the building to clean the air before it was being released into the atmosphere. And then in 2005, this coal yard wall was added. So in our kind of logic following this out was that, you know, in 2013, this building looks like this. Maybe in 2017, the building could look something like this, with this new addition, a green connection, and a more robust relationship with the river. I want to have invite Steve Apfelbaum up, who's our ecologist on the team, just to talk a little bit more specifically about the importance of the site, the landscape, and the space around the building. Steve?
Thanks, Jeannie. You've heard how the knowledge about local place and honoring history has been incorporated into the thinking so far with regard to the architecture and the building. We've tried to do the exact same thing with regard to the ecology of place. You know, how has the river changed? How has the watershed that's carried water from a very large landscape past this building changed? How has the ecology of the campus setting changed? And with the help of Chelsea and Amy, with Chelsea focusing on the ecological side of it, the flora and fauna changes, and Amy focusing on the hydrologic and hydraulic changes in the river itself from the watershed, we began informing our thinking. And what we learned, partly from what they have done and what we have also done, is that on the north end, off the north end, where Route 80, I call it Highway 81 and Pleasant Street intersects, there used to be a stream system that's now storm sewered. It's now part of the storm sewer system. And what we'd like to do is daylight that stream system that came down from some of the residential units in the tennis court area off to the east of that intersection, and bring that back through as a daylighted feature through the north end of the campus, cross Pleasant Street, and use that as an entranceway feature in part to distinguish that north end of campus, which presently, other than a sign at the intersection, really doesn't give you any feeling that you're entering a special place. The other thing that we'd like to do is honoring the oak savanna and the prairie ecosystem history of this place. We'd like to bring that vegetation down from the ridge sides and commingle that with a formal planting in a boulevard median or a street median, I think is what you'd call it, Jeannie. Mm-hmm. I'm just the lowly ecologist. Something that runs right down the middle of the street that creates traffic calming and gives students a really high probability of successfully getting across the street. And also provides some calming and a wonderful place, shade and so forth. I forgot to mention that this daylighted stream system would terminate in a wetland system that would cleanse the water, which would be on top of the capped coal area. And once that water is cleansed, it would enter the stream, enter the river. And then that whole area north of the building would be part of a native landscaped area and a formal potential playfield. Playfield being a place where people play sports and whatever people play here at Beloit College. Some of the other green connections, the connection to the river itself becomes really important. It's very difficult to get down to the river in any of the address that Beloit has along Pleasant Street. So the opportunity along a new walkway, a new boardwalk, ways to actually engage with the river become a special part of the effort here.
Thank
so
you.
I think with that.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And so, you know, it was necessary for us to kind of zoom out and look at these potential, you know, opportunities to make the site more connected, even though all of those pieces and parts are not, you know, literally part of our footprint of our site, but to look at how in the future, you know, this could be made much more pedestrian friendly and so on. Okay, so with that, connections to the river, I also want to introduce Sachin Anand from DBHMS, who is going to talk a little bit about another special way we want to use the river to reduce our energy use and our increase our sustainability.
Thanks, Jeannie. I'm the lowly engineer on the team. So when we first started working on the project, one of the things when we work on projects is we try to look for resources around the building. Typically on a project, my job entails making the space comfortable, thermally comfortable for the folks who are going to use it, providing lighting in there, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection. So that's really what I do. But if we can find resources, especially with an existing building, and so we started thinking about it. The two big resources we had here, one was the Rock River, and two was the building itself. It's a pretty intense thermal mass, and we're actually in a building which has a pretty heavy thermal mass. Those can be your best friends if you use them correctly, or those can, in some way, if you don't use them correctly, they may not be your best friend. So what we did was we came up with this concept of an isothermal envelope, and what we do here is, if you see the image on the left, that's how a traditional building envelope, which is the building skin, works, especially in the summertime, where the heat from the outside comes right through, and you can put insulation to slow it down. Insulation doesn't eliminate the heat transfer coming in, it just slows it down. So we've got a river source. So in our isothermal approach, what we did was we said we're going to try and put these tubes on the outside of the building, and we'll show you an image in a minute of how it would look like. And you can see those little circles in that sandwich, and we pass river water through it indirectly. We're not using the river water directly, just going through a bunch of heat exchangers. And we can take away that heat, so that heat, instead of coming into the space, gets rejected back out into the river. That way we can keep our building cooler, and we use less energy in terms of keeping it comfortable within the space. In the wintertime, we basically reverse the system. So we use the same tubes which we've embedded in that building envelope sandwich, and we make hot water within the building using the river as a source. And it's a little bit hard to understand, how can you use 35-degree water to make hot water which is 75 degrees? We have these magical devices we engineers call heat pumps. We use those, and we make 75-degree water, and both for we put heat into that envelope. That way we can keep that masonry wall warm, so you feel warm inside the space. It's kind of like radiant heating. If you've had radiators in your home, or if you have radiant floor heating in your home, or if you've experienced that, that's how this heating works. And in the summer season, the cooling works similarly. So this is an example of how we would do that. Those tubes are about 5/8 of an inch in diameter, and they would just get clipped onto the masonry on the outside and get screeded in with mortar, and then an architectural wrapper would go around it. That's what the building would look like to us underneath the skin.
Thank you, Sachin. I think that the thing that's so exciting about this is, you know, the building, it isn't insulated currently. So if you go in there in the winter, you will see it's even colder inside the building than outside, even on the coldest day. And that's because it's radiating the cold air in. And so the decision we have to make is, you know, where should we put the insulation, on the inside or the outside? And so Sachin and his team has been able to come up with this really incredible way to reduce our energy use by using the river water, and it also gives us a clear idea of where to put the insulation, and also to be able to maintain this exposed brick on the inside of the building. Okay, so at this point, we want to walk through the plans briefly. I was going to ask Maiken to come up and do it, Mike and Walker, come on up here, who is from Studio Gang. He's the project architect, and is going to walk us through the plans, and then we're going to show you the exciting interior elevations, the exterior, and then we'll end at the model.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to actually maybe flip to the next slide so we can start at the front door. We have some basic large pieces of program in the building: a swimming pool, a wellness center, a lecture hall / theater, student center spaces, a running track, a fitness center, a conference center, and then the big gymnasium, big open space. This is the ground floor down at the street level, and we have an entry there in the middle of the building, which takes you into an atrium space. It's 2 levels on the south side, east side. And then into your left is the pool. Straight ahead are the locker rooms, and then a hallway through to the lecture hall theater. And that theater steps down into the basement space. So there's a breakout space and some open multi-purpose spaces around that down below on the basement level. Into the right is where we have the wellness center, and there are some exam rooms in there, counseling rooms, things like that. Up. The next level is what we call the main turbine hall level, and this is the existing sort of main floor of the building. So those images, the photos that you've seen of the turbine hall tend to be in this space. And we're thinking this is really the heart of the building, and it's the student center level of the building. And there's a lot of things in there like meeting rooms, there's a little cafe, there's a lot of big lounge spaces in the turbine hall itself, which is a very grand room. A lot of that is movable furniture so that that space could be opened up for events like a commencement even. Then general multi-purpose rooms, maybe some dance classes in those rooms, some study spaces, and a new mail center also. Next level. This is the track level, and the track passes through both the turbine hall, the pool hall, and then in through what we've been calling the jungle gym, where all of that steel is that you saw. Those coal hoppers are in that area. So we've got some fitness center spaces in there, just kind of open floor slab spaces, railings around them. So it's open to the big turbine hall. It's a very social feeling in there. You could be up there exercising and still have a conversation with somebody who's reading down below in the turbine hall. The track experience should be pretty exciting because you're going through all of that steel structure, the old existing structure, out into this big grand space of the turbine hall, down through the pool hall, and then back again.
Also, just to add into that, this is interesting in that there are open weight areas and some workout areas mixed with some study areas as well. So this is where this mixing starts to occur. Now go up 1 level.
On this level, we have additional fitness center spaces. So on the right-hand side of the plan, those are more workout spaces, fitness machines of various kinds. We wanted to try and keep those areas broken up so you have discrete sort of pods of activity. That allows some to be more private, some to be more open, and you don't get a situation where the entire fitness center is sort of taken over by one group at any time. There's lots of opportunities for different types of activity. Also on this level then is the conference center. Mention.
Yeah,
yes.
just to mention, and 2 of the kind of things that were remnants in the building that we're reusing are like, this is inside those coal hoppers. We're going to turn that into like these little group study rooms. So you like actually go into the coal hopper and have like a booth seating around the little table. And then this one over here is what is called the tube room. The tube cube, I guess, is a better word for it. It was originally this incredible structure surrounded by tubes, and we want to put a floor in there and make that possible to be a seminar room as well. So there'll be like little spaces that people can reserve, nooks and crannies that have sight lines to other things, but are part of this landscape of fitness and recreation.
And then over on the left-hand side of the plan is the conference center. So there we have a room that can seat 200 people. It's got a sort of pre-function space that looks out over a deck, which is the roof of the pool hall. That has an amazing view back down the river, down toward downtown, over the dam. And there's some other little support room spaces in there also. And then the next level up is the top level of the building, which is the big open space, which is a big open space.
Left to the imagination. But this space, one of the criteria for the space was we wanted a space that would be, you know, as big as the current the Marvin Field House, but also to make sure that the lighting is even, and so when you won't have sharp shadows in there when you're playing, and it could be, we have laid out in here a number of different kinds of fields that would be usable for. And as you can see here, this little circle, that's the actual smokestack coming up through. So there's a lower ceiling level here and then a high ceiling level here. It's naturally ventilated as well, and it's this translucent material that would allow the daylight to come in, but also at night give it this incredible glowing box that would become, you know, this future icon for Beloit College and for the city of Beloit. Okay, thanks, Mike. And then just some cutaway. This is a cutaway section. You're standing on the riverside, cutting through the building overall. So you can see on the far right the pool area, the auditorium we talked about where lectures could take place is on sloped seating that connects down to the basement level, where there is also multi-purpose spaces. This void right here is the existing void that is in the turbine hall, and we're using that as a fulcrum to spiral movement around it and increase sight lines to all the different activities. So when you're in the space, like the burnt umber layer here, color is the kind of like the future student union, you know, the place where people are hanging out on big soft sofas and things, but you can really see a lot of what's going on from there, including using that void to look down and see into the auditorium, or a projection of what's going on into the auditorium at that point. You can see the track, which is 190 meters of a track wrapping around and skewering through this existing structure. And then the conference center here, looking out with windows looking out over the turbine hall, and then windows on that side into the building and windows on the other side down to downtown Beloit. And then with the big open space at the top, you see these trusses. We really want a clear span structure there without columns, so that it will be, you know, really flexible and able to be used for many different activities. Okay, so now just to give you a sense, I wanted to show the boiler room, which we call the tube cube. This was on opening day, or in the very beginning of when the Powerhouse was used. The board of directors actually sat inside there. So that's the place we want to turn into a seminar room, as you can see in the sketch right here, which would be pretty cool, I think. All right, so now some more finished renderings of the interior. And these are just renderings, like I said, but pretty exciting to see. This is a view from the pool area. And you can see how the track is slicing through the pool. This is in a lower part of the building, but it's in its own environment. So it's the humidity is different in the pool area, but this track is connected to the turbine hall and the fitness center, but it's inside of a tube as it passes through the pool area. So could you imagine like running, doing some laps and seeing what's going on in the pool and having that kind of kinetic activity always going on, which is pretty exciting. This next view is looking in the turbine hall, which was kind of the student union area, the hangout area, where you can see that same view we saw earlier. Here are the two big coal hoppers that are inhabitable now, and you can see the track, open air track coming through that space, and with plenty of places to hang out and to have a coffee, study, or do whatever. And you will also see in these areas the connections up to the different parts of the fitness area. So really just even running up and down the stairs inside this big volume is going to be a lot of fitness right there. I am sure that it would be a good workout. Okay, so the next view is looking south. Now you're up in the turbine hall looking, like looking, here's the track going by, the conference center in the distance. And this is that big void I was talking about, circumscribed by the circulation. And you can see here the back of the auditorium, which could be, we're imagining, our fantasy is that it could be glass, and they could also have a projection on it, or it could have a curtain or a blackout shade. It could be like almost this window into something that's the intellectual side of Beloit College that permeates through this incredible landscape of social activity. Up at the fitness level 5, this is just looking at, this is the track level, and you can see how it expands out with some machines here and there, or sorry, the track level is down here. This is above the track level, looking down onto the track level, and you can see how these diagonal views become very important. And there will also be views literally out the windows. Currently, the windows are kind of a frosted glass, but it will be possible to see right out. And we were thinking of using this beam right here for, which was the beam of the crane, to maybe use for video or information about the campus and what's going on. And then up in the big open space, it's really this filtered light, which is ideal for all kinds of activities where you want to keep the ball, in your sight lines and able to work out inside in inclement weather. So from the exterior, this strategy produces a building that continues the language of stepping from low to high, with the low part at the south end of the building and stepping up. And what you're seeing here are these new parts, which are, basically, every part of this building is of its time, and we felt as an architecture this should be of its time. So the things that we're producing here are, of lending some transparency to the building. It was relatively solid, and lending this kind of technology and translucent lighting to the big open space. From the river, you can see this translucent, maybe a polygal surface, which is an air-filled cladding that will let the light through, and seeing the new cladding, which we're proposing over the insulation that wraps on the 1930s portion of the Powerhouse. And so daytime view and nighttime view becoming this real illuminated box. So having shown you all these renderings of the building, I think I should reiterate that we're still exploring if this one potential option would be to have this translucent box really on the site as opposed to at the top, just because we want to make sure that we've explored all the options. And I think those are the two things we're looking at right now, and we're going to show you, how that might look adjacent to the building when you come up to the model. But with that, it wraps up where we are today with the Powerhouse project. So thank you very much. And
I think we have a few minutes for a few comments or questions before we head up to the model. So does anybody want to kick off with a question or comment?
So the inside main part, I think visually it's amazing. I think it looks very appealing. My biggest concern or question would be about the noise pollution. So if you're down hanging out in the lounge kind of enjoying a meal or something,
Yeah.
and then there's weights going on in the background, or some people are kind of thumping through with the track. So how do you feel the noise pollution will bounce and reverberate off the steel through the building?
That's a great question, and which is one reason why we have a really great acoustician on the team to help us understand where we need to absorb that sound, where we need to redirect sound, and what it actually will be producing. So I think what's great about the building is there's lots of surfaces that we can use to help, like the bottom of the track, for example, all the surfaces within the jungle gym, what we're calling. So we have a lot of opportunity to absorb sound, and which will probably be necessary, but we've just begun the acoustic, study of the space. But we do understand that that's probably going to be one of the biggest technical challenges, is to figure out, what will that level be, and what's the right level for it to be, to allow for studying as well as recreation and track. So yes, to be determined, and it's definitely on our radar. So.
I did not see anywhere on there that you mentioned the elevators anywhere.
Okay. Do you want to see the elevators?
No, I just want to make sure.
Oh, they're definitely in there. Okay. So if, it's a very good question, and because this is we have to design it. The main core that skewers all the different levels and all the different programs is, if you can look, it's really in the heart of the building, adjacent to those two big coal hoppers. So we have vertical circulation that takes you up to every level. If you keep your eye focused on that point, you can see it here too, adjacent to the big open space, and then down from there if you keep your eye on that point. We also have added, there's an additional exiting stair that's taking care of the exiting from all levels at this point here. So, but what's I think really exciting about the elevators, this is geek alert, but elevators are will also make it possible for people that are running along the riverfront to actually come into the building, come one level up, and get to the level of the campus. So kind of transforming the accessibility of this whole campus and the connection to the river as well. So in a way, it's like the building is actually acting as a piece of infrastructure that will make the river accessible.
Got time for a couple more. Seeing none, let's thank Jeannie and her team one more time.
Oh. Maybe there's one more in the back.
So I think this will probably end our live cast for now, and we would like to invite you, those of you who are here, to come up to the model and engage with that a little bit. Obviously.